capability building should be, at a base, the the mantra for consultants. And if they're not there, I mean, it's kind of, it's the work I was referring to. I mean, if you feel incentivized to upsell or create more problems or create a dependency, it's against the consulting in principle. But I think it's gotten so muddy over the years of that industry. Like a lot of things, if you let the industry become self-perpetuating and self-propagating, it grows in a way that benefits the people that are in it, which again is not attributing blame. I think that's a natural thing for any business model that starts to want to fortify itself and to grow and to get more business. But it's certainly it's the paradox of consulting, which is if you're automating, if you're improving, you should be slowly putting yourself out of work. Just like the same thing, if your job was to do that internally for a company, you should always be at risk of putting yourself out of a job if you're the one who's supposed to be improving things and kind of solving the environment and solving. So it's a tough thing. And I think Madelyn, you articulated it beautifully. And I think consultants, it's not just the businesses. We started the conversation with businesses, they need to go through a mindset change. The consultants are the other side of that. People who come in and say, I can solve your problems. They're part of that conversation too. And we all need to get together. People are going to see things differently, and we're going to elevate the way we think about business, the way we think about organizations. It has to be cooperative. You can't say that I'm the person who's going to solve your problem, even though I don't really believe these problems should have existed in the first place. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of stuff there that needs to be fixed in that conversation on both sides.
And that's the key. I think it's both sides, because even if we did live in that aspirational world where every consultant was led by Madelyn's principles here, I think that we would still find that there's a lot of resistance, as we talked about already. If you come in and say, hey, I could elevate your entire consciousness, I could help you avoid problems like these in the future, you're still going to get, no, I really just want you to solve this problem to some degree, so and that, when we said, it's $1 million question, how do you get an organization to have their consciousness raised? Well, that's the tension on why maybe some of the consulting industry exists the way it does and the way we wish it didn't. So, I mean, it's also element of the patient still smoking and the doctor saying, but I could show you how you could feel better, or why this is going to cause more pain, and yet they keep going. So it's there is that dynamic.
Well, that's what I was just going to add on to your comment. It's everything. It's the entire culture, is our entire mindset of this time period. And I'll just say Western culture because it's what we happen to be in. But this mentality of, you feel tension, you feel pain, and you go to the doctor. And if the doctor has two options, one says that you can just take this pill and feel better, or you need to go back and you need to invest in spiritual work, and you need to invest in wholeness and making your body whole, and like put the work back on them and say, you are the root cause of your own distress and your own problems. People will turn and they'll grab the pill and say, thank you. I'll try this first, and then I'll come back and maybe I'll work on that other stuff you were talking about. And that's the culture. That's become normalized. And again, I don't say that disparagingly to any particular entity or group of people, but I think we can all relate to that to some extent, that's the mentality. And it's the same thing. That mentality carries from your personal life to your professional life, whether you're a consultant, whether you're a business. And if we're going to go more towards what the ReWild Group is saying, what Truval is saying in terms of, principled conscious foundations, which creates environments for success, that mentality is going to have to shift, because it's kind of diametrically opposed in a lot of ways.
Madelyn, have you followed up with entities or seen how their consciousness has shifted? The ones that successfully went through various problem solving or the process. I should have said problem solving. We already.
I do get the pleasure of kind of getting a glimpse into that, and I do have to say before I jump into that, Jon, I appreciate that you're going to call me out if it's too aspirational, and I like that. I think it's also when I think about leaving an organization better, though. I think it can be in micro ways too. And that's part of it, is that there's some organizations that our network of advisors are the people who subscribe to our methodology and use it, whether they're a business owner or a consultant. It's about making incremental changes. And I think if I go back to that $1 million question of like, how do you do it? It's kind of one step at a time. It is one business making incremental changes, showing up in that in their sphere of influence as stronger, more successful, more resilient. We talk about the idea that a lot of times structure or principles, these foundations, they're not intended to give a rigidity. They should be created in a way that gives resilience, right? That it has this it can withstand pressure. It can withstand changes. It can withstand time. It doesn't
Otherwise, it would be
break.
just
It's not
replacing
brittle.
what they have now with another replacement.
Right.
Same exact
Exactly.
problem.
Exactly. And it is challenging because what we are trying to do is say, okay, this is what you're experiencing, and we're going to infuse something that's going to change that for your organization. And a lot of people say, okay, well, what's the ROI on that? Yeah, that's a real good question. What is the ROI between an organization that can withstand going through something like COVID and what can't? I mean, it's a lot, but it's more than money for sure. But that is how that's how it's how we prospect things. So let me go back to the earlier question of what are some examples? So let me just think of some stories. Let me talk about one entrepreneur who he had started out and he's a tech consulting and had some partners, and they were struggling. And what was coming up was things like not enough cash flow, and they weren't trying to acquire clients was really challenging. Well, we did work on their values. When we talk about values, we talk about two sets. We talk about brand values, and that's really the promise we make to our clients and our market. And then our core values, which is the promise we make to our team and each other. They're two different people, two different sets of people. They care about two different things. And going through that work, what became very clear is that the partners, the reason that they were having trouble with cash flow, and the reason they were having trouble acquiring new customers is because they did not share values. And so they decided to part ways. And a year later, the CEO is very successful building his team. But he would describe it as he just had clarity on who he was and how he was trying to show up. And that led to being able to invite people into that. That is not the problem he thought he needed to solve. I mean, it wasn't even in his purview, right? He was but first-time entrepreneur, and it was like, okay, these guys have connections. We should join forces and let's go out to the market. And I know that there's a million other stories just like that one, that it's like, well, there was something foundational, fundamental, principle-based, the crack in the foundation that would have always persisted, no matter if you got a new marketing company, right? Because we're not acquiring new clients, but we need to redo the website. We need to be better on social. And those are all these things that it's like we're trying to solve that thing that we see as the problem when it's not. We can spend a lot of money there.